Welcome to the Worldview Minute, a ministry of Christ Bible Church in the Twin Cities. As we begin looking at the Christian worldview, as we start to think about what does it really take to build the foundations? Where does it start? Where do we begin with trying to understand what the Bible has to say about life? And the answer is, well, really pretty obvious. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And that is the genesis, pun intended, of the Christian worldview, that God spoke the universe into existence. And this is something we have to understand. Where you begin ultimately determines where you will end up. And we're going to cover that in another video later on. But the Bible starts with this doctrine of creation ex nihilo. That is, when God created, when he made the world, he made it in such a way as that he only used what was within himself, his own abilities, his own character. God didn't take material like you and I do when we make things, but rather he created out of the abundance of who he was and who he is that he uses his nature, his glory, his power, and then that is then put onto his creation. His creation reflects back the nature of God. So in the beginning, God created ex nihilo, out of nothing. He used nothing outside of himself to make everything that exists. And that this universe, therefore, is not one with God. God is not one with the universe, though but he is different and distinct, or he transcends the universe. And this establishes for us this absolutely essential truth that Peter Jones calls that the universe is twoism. There's a two-ness to the universe. Right? If you believe in naturalism, if you believe that everything is ultimately material, then you believe in a oneness universe, that there's only the natural, nothing supernatural, that the universe began with a singularity that somehow went boom, and out of that came everything that then exists. But this means that everything that exists can be reduced to that singularity, that there's an inherent oneness to the universe. We could call this naturalism versus naturalism and supernaturalism. And that in the doctrine of ex nihilo, we see that God exists, one thing exists, and his creation, the creator and the creation. And that is an inherent two-ness to everything then that exists. And the doctrine of ex nihilo really establishes for us three critical truths if we want to understand the world rightly. And the first is this: God is God, and you are not. I'm not. Creation's not. God is not one with creation. Sure, he dwells in his creation. His creation reflects his glory, but God is distinct. He is separate. He is something entirely different than his creation. He is not dependent upon the creation for its existence, but the creation is dependent upon him for its existence. From the farthest reaches of space to the smallest molecules, all of them are millisecond by millisecond dependent upon God for its existence. But God needed nothing. God did not create because he needed something to create. He did not create because he was lonely. He did not create because he needed worship or love or community, but rather the God who is there, whose Father, Son, and Holy Spirit lacked no good thing, but merely created because he wanted to. The second thing that this establishes for us is that the universe is real. Philosophers in their infinite wisdom, as it were, not really, but they sometimes wonder, is the universe real? Is even our interaction with the universe real? Are we stuck in something like the Matrix? Is this all just an illusion? Is this an illusion of God's mind? Is this an illusion of our mind? Does our mind actually interact with the universe, or are we only interacting with our conception of the universe? And Christianity bursts through all of that high academic nonsense and says God created, and when he created, the universe was there. He created in 6 days, and on the seventh, he rested, and there was the universe, objectively there and distinct from God. And the third and final thing this establishes for us is it gives us a foundation for all distinctions. One of the things Western society is struggling with right now is something called critical theory. We'll go into that more probably in some later videos as well. But it makes the assertion that all distinctions that we find, especially in society, are really just exercises of power, and that we need to deconstruct those. But this is based upon a materialistic, naturalistic, Darwinistic understanding of the world. That the world can only really be made sense of, that all of these categories are arbitrary, they're cultural or personal preferences that are then forced on others. So we no longer have things like truth and untruth. We don't have light and darkness anymore. Those are just power plays that we use to describe our reality, but whether or not they're accurate, it doesn't really matter. We don't have boys and girls anymore. That is something that is oppressive and forced upon us by those who have power. And ultimately, this is because we have rejected God. If everything came from a singularity, then everything is inherently one. There is no distinction. There's no foundation for distinction. Binary things are therefore illogical because everything can be reduced to the oneness of the universe. But Christianity says this. There is an inherent two-ness. There's a foundation for every distinction, for whether it be between light and dark, good and evil, right and wrong, or boys and girls. That there's a binary hardwired into this universe. There is God and not God. There is the creator and the creation. This is the importance of creation ex nihilo. Because even when we talk about things being binary or non-binary, the categories are still binary. You're either this or that. This is hardwired into the very fabric of the universe because God created ex nihilo. If we miss this, we will miss so much of what follows, not only in the Bible's story, but also in reality as we interact with it. So creation ex nihilo is absolutely essential for us as we formulate the foundations of the Christian worldview.